He's holding up a plastic bag next to a chick in a nest.
Okay.
And saying the adult birds are feeding plastic to their chicks. There's no I've searched the internet thoroughly. He's actually removed one sequence, that sequence where he's holding up the plastic bag. It no longer is available on the internet. I don't know why.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Where did you see it the first time?
If about a year ago,
Right.
before I wrote my book, I think he's on to me, and he's an absolute liar in many cases, and I've made 3 of them in the book. One of them is that albatross adults are feeding plastic to their young, mistaking it for food. Greenpeace says the same thing. The Smithsonian Institute in the United States is saying the same thing. They are pushing this lie that albatross can't tell plastic from food. Sir David Attenborough never mentions the word gizzard anywhere. He wrote the bloody Secret Life of Birds book. He did a 10-part series on BBC on birds, right? And he doesn't know that birds all have gizzards that need to have solid objects in them to grind their food because they have no teeth and therefore have 2 stomachs. All birds, every bird in the world. That's why all land birds take pebbles into their stomach, and when their chicks are in the nest and can't go and get pebbles for themselves, they put pebbles in their chick.
So if you have a more convenient pebble that is made of plastic and it's able to do the same job, then...
No, that land birds do not feed bits of plastic to their chicks as far as I know, because there's plenty of pebbles. But out in the ocean, where birds are actual marine animals that nest on rocky islands, barren rocky islands, where all there is a bit of grass, right? There's no pebbles there either.
Yeah.
So traditionally, their favorite, naturally, they feed their chicks squid, little squid. In those squid is a beak. That beak is retained in the gizzard as part of the digestive aids, right? It's like a ball mill in mining, where they put steel balls into a mill to grind the ore. It's exactly the same concept in many ways. But in the gizzard, it's a muscular motion, where they go like this with their gizzard and grind the food with these solid objects in there to help with it. And so the other thing they'll take is pumice, which is volcanic lava from undersea volcanoes, and because it's spongy, it floats. It's got air in it, or gases in it. So it floats. So little bits of pumice will come to the surface, sometimes in huge layers when an undersea volcano goes off. But it's not always there. So they have to resort then to hard bits of wood and nuts that have dropped off a plant in a river or by the seashore and come out in the ocean. So they have to work really hard to find enough digestive aids that are suitable in size and hardness. It's not easy for them. And when plastic started showing up in the ocean 60 years ago, they started choosing pieces of the right size, not plastic bags, not cigarette lighters, not spools of yarn. That's all staged. They don't feed them those kind of things. And they're not feeding the plastic bits. They're giving it to them to ingest so they can put it in their gizzard. That's where it goes. They know how to decide which goes in which stomach.
So the story that I read had this lady explaining about the situation, and that the parents, she'd used the word feed, parents had come back and given the chicks these plastic pebbles, and I can't remember the word that they used to describe what happens as they're just about to fly the nest. Some bird word.
The bolus.
Maybe
They cough up most of the hard objects in their gizzard, because the reason they have so much in their gizzard is because they will digest their food even faster then, and the parents won't have to feed them for the rest of their lives, right? So they want them out of the nest as soon as possible. So they put a lot of plastic, which weighs a lot, but plastic is never a majority of what's in a young bird's gizzard. Never. Like it's shown in those staged photos. It's all plastic.
What this lady said was, just as they were about to leave, I saw them eject the plastic back up and throw it back up just as they were about to leave the nest. And
yes, just the plastic, but all the other items they have in there to do the same job.
Yeah.
And plastic is always a minority of it. And she's got all these plastic bags and big plastic cloths and things. That's all staged.
Yeah, but it's not going to fit in a small bird, is it?
No, they're not. They're actually quite big, because albatrosses are big. but it's not gonna work. If you see the photo in my book, the only photo I know of a adult albatross giving plastic to its chick, you can see it in its beak going into the chick's mouth, and it's all nice little pieces of colored plastic that are just the right shape and size. It's not plastic bags. It's not cigarette lighters like they show in the staged pictures.
But when you read that article, what you see is if you didn't know that the birds needed the plastic to break up food in their stomach, if you didn't know that that was something that aids them with their digestion, and that it is common for them to throw up the plastic, plus presumably all of the other stuff that's been in there helping them to break up their food, you would read that article, and it is accurate. What she says is correct, but the things that have been purposefully omitted and the understanding about why some of the inclusions have been put in there and why biologically that might still be natural, that creates a situation. And that was the moment I was reading it and I thought, this really is quite sinister. It does feel like it's quite a manipulative way to tell people what has happened, but frame it in such a manner that makes us, again, hate our own existence.
You could say evil as a synonym of sinister. And I believe it is, because Sir David Attenborough also lied about the walruses committing suicide due to a lack of ice. That's the final chapter in my book.
They committed suicide. Was this that Harry Carey thing?
Yes, they jumped off a cliff to their death in order to avoid an attack by 20 polar bears. Oh, he didn't mention that part. And that is well documented. There are photographs of the bears. The people who live in a nearby town know that the reason the walruses leapt off a cliff was because they were about to be attacked and eaten by polar bears.
What was the proposed reason?
Not enough ice. As if you can put those two things together. It's sort of like polar bears are inbreeding because there isn't enough ice. As if those two things are connected somehow, right? And he made it seem as though it was connected, that there was... Because he said the reason the polar bears have come on the land and got to a place where they could jump off, they did, because there was no ice for them in the sea below, which is always the case on the north shore of Russia. The ice recedes in the summer. And funny enough, he says the ice is their home. No, the sea is their home. That's where the walrus lives and fishes. They don't fish, actually. They dig clams on the bottom. And when the ice recedes away from the coast and they are coming out of the water to haul out, they come on the land. There's a reason why it is an officially designated walrus sanctuary, this piece of land. And he implies that it's unnatural that they are coming on the land because there's not enough ice for them to get onto. When in fact, they cannot exist. They are a coastal species. They cannot exist deep sea. So if the ice recedes to where it's 600 feet deep or 1,000 feet deep, it's no good to them because they are bottom feeders. And as I say in my book, they are bottom feeders, much like Sir David Attenborough and his TV crew on the planet Earth, or whatever, our planet, right? They too are bottom feeders in this case. And they are lying because the reason the walruses leapt to their death, fell to their death. Walruses can't actually leap, but they plummeted to their death because a pack of polar bears was going to eat them. And instead, the polar bears just walked down to where all the dead walruses were and ate them while they're dead. And I'm sure the walruses would rather be eaten while they were dead than while they were alive. So that's the deal there. And he is bald-faced lying to the whole world about this, and he continues to do it. He had people in Davos in tears recently telling this story, even though he now knows that I have busted him. And so has Susan Crockford, the polar bear expert, who's also an expert in all Arctic animals, has busted him publicly. And he sticks to this story because BBC lets him.
Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe. It makes me very happy indeed. Peace.
That was Patrick Moore. You see there, Greenpeace ex-president, He was into that hippie green thing, but for good reasons at the time. You can read more about him or watch more about him, why he got into, it was mainly anti-war, anti-nuclear bombs, that kind of thing. But anyway, he's like Tony Heller. There's many more, but they won't get the audience, unfortunately, that we need compared to a guy like David Attenborough, BBC, these big productions that draw millions of viewers, and they won't know. It's hard to get the word out. All the deception, the bottom feeders. All right, thank you.